In a major diplomatic breakthrough in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia and Iran have decided to re establish diplomatic relations. What's another point to be noted is that the deal was brokered not by the US but by its arch rival, China. So, what does the bridging of the Middle East's most difficult diplomatic divide mean for the countries and also for the world? More importantly, will the deal impact India and how? To answer all these questions, we have with us former diplomat Anil Trigunayat, who was India's ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta, and is an expert on Middle East. Sir, how important is the Saudi Arabia-Iran deal, and how will it impact India? Also, why is it that China has played the peacemaker and not the US?
As you know, that the region West Asia or the Middle East, as it's called by the Western world, is an extremely important region. It is India's extended neighborhood. We are dependent for oil and gas to 70 to 90% on the region. We have a huge population, so it is the stability and security in the region is extremely important. And it also has several maritime routes through which 60-70% of the global trade passes. So, from countries in the region for the global requirements, it is extremely important. The region remains stable. Unfortunately, we have seen that the region has also been one of the biggest hotspots. There have been conflicts between Saudi Arabia or the uh, Sunni countries and the Shia Iran, especially since 1979, or Iran or Israel, which suffer from this mutually assured destruction syndrome, the existential crisis. So now we have seen the changes taking place between the Abraham Accord countries with the help of the Americans, which was like the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco and others who normalized relations with Israel. So a lot of changes are taking place, but the changes between in the region also came about. There is a desire in the region to somehow find a modus vivendi with one another. Although there are trust deficit between Saudi Arabia and Iran or other Sunni countries because of the way they have their geo-regional ambitions, I would say. So, in that sense, what happens is that the countries are looking at somehow to adjust. Now, this discussion between Saudi Arabia and Iran has been going on for the last 2 years with the help of Iraqis and the Omanis. But in the meantime, another parallel trend that has happened, and this is also something to do with the perception in the region that United States is withdrawing from it for two reasons. Number one is it itself has become the major oil and gas producer in the world and has become a competitor of the region. On the other hand, it is also more invested now in Indo-Pacific. So China in the last, since at least 2013, has been, ever since it launched its BRI initiative, it has seen that this region is extremely important because more than 60-70% of its oil and gas requirements are met from the region. So it wants to ensure that for its economic growth, it remains uh, strong in the region to even protect its own assets, its own economic heft or whatever it has in the region. So for over the years and since 2016, when President Xi Jinping came visiting three countries, he visited Iran, he visited Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. At the same time, he visited both the countries. And then in 2020, they signed this agreement for $400 billion investment in Iran and raising the partnership to strategic partnership level. And with Saudi Arabia, which provides more than 50% of the Chinese oil and gas. So therefore, they are extremely important suppliers. They are trying to get all the securities for themselves, energy security, economic security. So China has been investing in the way because it has a policy which is called non-interventionist, non-prescriptive policy compared to the Western policy. So the monarchs, the autocratic leaders in the region, they all like the Chinese, and they think that since these countries are coming only for economic upliftment, working with us for mutual growth and all, they are our good partners. And so China has acquired that fact. And now the China is seeing the vacuum that is being created by the Western countries, especially the United States, which was the main security guarantor in the region. So therefore, now China has taken this initiative, and I have myself visited Beijing a couple of years ago for this China Middle East Forum, and I have seen that Middle Eastern countries, the leaders, everybody wanted China to play much bigger role in the region. So what we are seeing is China had, if you remember, China had offered to host talks in the Palestinian issue. They stand guaranteed because they have great relations also with Israelis with whom they have innovative strategic partnership with Palestinians, they always stand by the Palestinian cause over. So they offered to host the talks between the two. Now, in the meantime, this Saudi Arabia and Iran talks are extremely important, and the fact that they have trilaterally agreed to, although I must say that even without the overt Chinese help, I mean, China is always there behind one way or the other. The Iranians had posted their diplomats at the OIC Secretariat in Riyadh 2 years ago. So now, then, in 2 months' time, they will be exchanging the ambassadors once again. So, in my view, it is a very welcome sign. And I think the government of India has also recently commented that we have always preferred dialogue and diplomacy to disputes. So, it is a good thing that it has happened. So, from our perspective, if there is a stability, security in the region, it is good for us. So, I think from that point of view, I look. And of course, it is an important development.
How does the Saudi Iran deal to restore diplomatic ties look like for the US and Israel?
The US has welcomed the deal or cautiously, but it is true that they were not really expecting that the Chinese will pull the carpet or they will be able to bring about this deal so quickly. At the same time, if you remember the earlier when JCPOA was finalized in 2015, at that time China has worked with Russia on Iran, pressurizing it to come and conclude that agreement. Thereafter, China has been working hard with the Iranians, with the Europeans, with everybody else, so that the deal is not broken completely, and during the Biden administration, that it could be revived. So China there has played a role. Of course, it's for its own national interest also, but at the same time to keep its regional influence intact. But at the same time, now because Saudi Arabia is its most important partner today in the region, and therefore Saudi Arabia, UAE, and others in the Gulf have followed a policy of Act East. And so Act East means towards India and China. Now, the policy of if you come to think of it, of Iranians has always been anti-Western since 1979. So therefore, even if they agree on a JCPOA or they are able to do something, I think they are very keen on this particular issue, and that's what they want to do. Israel obviously is not happy at all because Saudi Arabia is the main arbiter of this, but Saudi Arabia also is the custodian of two holy mosques, as a leader of the Islamic world, and therefore the Palestinian cause, they will have to see that there is some movement in that. So that's why Saudi Arabia, even though has good security ties and relations with Israel, like every other country has, but it does not have the overt diplomatic ties. They have allowed the Israeli planes to fly. Our Prime Minister flew over the Saudi airspace when he went to Israel. So I think that they are working relationships with Israel already there.
So, will this deal have any impact on the Ukraine Russia war or on the West's effort to isolate Russia?
Well, as you know, that all the countries in the region have not gone along with the Western narrative. Have some of them have condemned, like Kuwait, had condemned because they were invaded themselves. So in that side, but Saudi Arabia, the UAE was in a Security Council and abstained on the issue for the first time when Russia was being called out. So most of the countries in the region have not have may have criticized Russia, but they have not gone along with the sanctions. Plus, most of the oil producing countries are part of the OPEC Plus, in which they have very close partnership with Russia, and they don't follow the US diktat on that. United States, actually, there was a thing when the production, they wanted the production to increase. The both Saudi Arabian leaders and the UAE leader refused to take call from President Biden. Likewise, President Biden's visit in last July to Saudi Arabia was way down compared to the kind of things which can be seen during President Xi Jinping's visit recently in December to Saudi Arabia when 20, 30 leaders from different parts of the world came, of Arab world came and met him. So Chinese have today is clearly visible on the scene. No doubt that the isolation of Iran will be curtailed in this process. May not be that much, but let us see how this deal really pans out. How China is able to secure the trust between the two so that they adhere to the thing. Like, for example, only thing they have at the moment agreed to, in my view, openly, was that territorial integrity and sovereignty is very important. Iran has been accusing Saudi Arabia and others of fomenting trouble during the protests that are happening. And the Saudis have been accusing Iran for supporting Houthis who have been attacking through drones and other missiles into Iran. So if all that gets stopped and both sides start working, but I think that there is a greater realization both on the part of Saudis and the Iranians, and of course, Emiratis are already in it. Qataris are already close to Iran. So Oman is close to Iran. So we don't. So we see that if Saudi Arabia happens, then you would see a probably a much better environment that will happen in the region.
What is the basic reason for the divide between Saudi Arabia and Iran, despite both being Islamic nations?
Well, one is the Shia Sunni divide. From 1979, when the Ayatollah Khomeini's government came to power, they started exporting Shia Islam. And of course, Saudi Arabia is the leader of the Islamic world as far as the Sunni leadership is also concerned. So obviously, that is a major intra-religional conflict that exists for supremacy of the Islamic world. So that is very much there. Then, secondly, that the support of Iranians to Hamas, to Hezbollah in Iran, to Houthis in Yemen, all this is directly impacting all the other Arab countries. Then it has been able to have a courtesy 2003 war, Iraq war. It has a much greater influence in Iraq. Of course, more geopolitics is there, geoeconomics is there, and geostrategic dimensions are also there. Those are big powers, Iran and Saudi Arabia. But it is a good thing that they have begun to talk and establish diplomatic.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful interaction.